You're telling the story of that not truthful information that was spread that sparked a riot. First of all, that must be super frustrating. But is it also frustrating when perhaps your hands are tied when responding to a riot? And I think we've seen a lot of that going on today too.
I'm looking at what's happening in places like Portland, Seattle, Chicago, and recently Rochester, New York. The elected officials, I don't think that they've really identified the necessity of police in connection with maintaining a controlled environment. So when I go back to my situations, being a cop in the early 90s, I was a cop from during the crack epidemic in the United States in the South Bronx. So it was a very violent time. And I want to say police commanders had a genuine understanding, and they appreciated the fact of what the brutes on the ground were participating in connection with marshaling and public safety for the overwhelming majority of the citizens. So now we fast forward to now, what's not being understood is police chiefs are the interface between elected officials that are designing policy and the boots on the ground, which is the execution phase of the cops on the street. A lot of these elected officials have not understood this, and so they tend to itemize and not organize. When I say itemize, meaning to fit into a silo that's apart from police, as opposed to organizing and being part of the structure of elected officials and police. And this is presenting a tremendous problem. And unfortunately, this has happened primarily in cities that are controlled by Democratic mayors. This is a time where the country is under siege. Therefore, it's necessary that we need to coalesce behind law enforcement to introduce the necessity of public safety. And as a result of the failures of elected officials, we have innocent civilians that are dying regularly because of their failure to act. So this is a time where you can either make this moment or miss this moment. And unfortunately, a lot of these elected officials are missing this moment.
So I can't imagine. It must be hard enough to be a police officer in the midst of these riots, but then to know that perhaps in the back of your head that your elected officials don't have your back at all. Like that's even worse. One last question about police officers, then I want to get to the rioters themselves. I see so many videos of police officers standing, right? They're in a line or whatever, and people come up in their face and are screaming at them. And the worst is when you have a black police officer and you have black people screaming like all the worst racist things you can imagine. How do police officers keep their cool? It is amazing how much self-control I've seen out of police officers in the midst of all this. How do you do that?
Well, first, I don't care if it's a black person that's screaming at you if you're a black officer, or if it's a white supremacist. You're still being screamed at by someone, and it creates an uncomfortable environment. You have to take in consideration technological innovations have allowed a universal perspective on what's happening on the ground. So the officer that's being screamed at is somewhat impervious to the fact that this person is just launching a vitriolic campaign against them. And you have to understand, within the purview of the First Amendment, individuals have the right to protest. You may not like it, but at the same token, this is what we signed up for as police officers. And one of the things that we have on our side is time. Police have 8-hour shifts, and then you can move in another 8-hour shift to police in accordance. Where the rioters, they don't necessarily have that luxury. So it's one of these things where time is the entity that's on the side of police officers, and you just wait it out. It sucks, in particular, what's happening right now with the social justice movement. But once again, it goes back to what I stated earlier. This is what you signed up for, and police officers need to be avid professionals.
Wow, that was deep and insightful. I want more of that. Like, subscribe, get more.